Simon, talk to us a little bit about the most common questions that Christians have thrown at them by unbelievers. I'd imagine what about suffering would be number one, but are there three top questions, for example?
Yeah, well, you got that right in terms of suffering. I mean, particularly with teenagers as well. It is the number one question that teenagers are asking. If there's a good God, why does he allow all the suffering that he does in this world? And they're really asking, can I trust him? I mean, the big questions that we get really divide up into two categories. Either teenagers are asking, is God real? Mm-hmm. Or, if he is real, is he someone worthy of my worship? Is he someone that I can trust? And the question of suffering certainly fits into that second category. In terms of the question, is God real? The other big questions we get relate to science, actually, for teenagers. It seems to always prop up very quickly.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this idea that's common at schools and in the playgrounds, even from teachers sometimes at school, that science and Christian faith are somehow incompatible.
Yet there are many Oxford and Cambridge graduates, scientists and professors who have a Christian faith.
Exactly right, John. I mean, at the university level, this is not so much. I mean, at the university level, that would be considered a simplistic argument that science has done away with the existence of God. But at the teenage level, this is still something that's very popular. It's a very popular mood, and a lot of Christian teenagers in particular just feel completely inequipped to be able to deal with the question of science. And the other big one that comes up is the question of why trust the Bible? I mean, all the answers that you're giving me as a Christian seem to come from the Bible, but I, as someone who hasn't grown up in a church, is wondering, why should I even trust this Bible?
Okay, why should we trust the Bible, Simon? In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
How reliable is it? I mean, even the Gospels vary in details of the stories, etc., etc. Some books were left out of the original canon. Why should we trust it?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question because it comes up a lot. I mean, put it this way. One of the big questions is, has the Bible been altered over time? Mm-hmm. And that's easy to deal with because the proliferation of manuscripts, or copies of the New Testament Greek and the Old Testament Hebrew that we have, the proliferation of thousands and thousands of manuscripts means that even New Testament scholars today, historians, whether Christian, atheist, agnostic or whatever, are confident that the copy that we have today is the same as the New Testament Greek as it was original, as it was originally written, because as you know, there was no central control over Christianity until centuries after Jesus' life, which means that proliferation of copying of texts and manuscripts just went on and on and on, and we're still discovering these manuscripts in all sorts of interesting and varied places around the world. So that's easy to deal with, that sort of Dan Brown conspiracy that the New Testament has been altered over time, easy to deal with. But then the next question is, okay, well, if that's the case, how do we know that the original itself is reliable? How do we know that it gives us an accurate depiction of the events that actually took place? Now, the reason that we do is because the Bible withstands all the tests that an historian can throw at it. Two primary tests in relation to the original reliability of the Bible is one, when was it written? Now, we have the Gospels and the New Testament epistles being written within the lifetime of the events that actually took place, which means that people were alive at the time that these things were written and could say, if things were written that were not true, hey, this is not true. It would be like someone trying to write today that it was actually an Australian who was the first person on the moon. Well, there are people alive today who can say, no, actually, we know that wasn't true. It was Neil Armstrong. Or that the Vietnam War actually took place in Africa. Well, that idea wouldn't get off the ground because people are living today who experienced and saw those events. Similarly, the Gospels and the New Testament epistles were written during the lifetime. And so we have multiple eyewitness accounts of the events, which is why historians are very happy to take...
Even some who are not Christians. Yeah.
Even secular historians. And this is a lot of thing that people don't realise, that secular historians take the New Testament and the Bible seriously as an historical document. Now, of course, secular historians have issues with the supernatural parts of it, and that's a whole different question about, how do we understand miracles. But in terms of the historical reliability of the Bible, of the events, no problem at all. And the other reason we can say that the Bible is historically reliable is that it meets another test that historians throw at any historical document, which is the external test, which is to ask, does this historical document actually correspond with other evidence that we have in relation to the events that it's purporting to speak about? Archaeology, other historical documents. Even so far, imagine this. If you are an historian, you are going to get a lot of popularity simply by being able to demonstrate how this archaeology or this other historical document clearly disproves the reliability of the Bible. But yet, after the Bible has been subjected to more scrutiny than any other historical document ever has, and time again, it proves to correlate with what we know from that time of history, from archaeology and history, etc.
Why not start your day with Inspirational Breakfast, Monday to Fridays from 7 a.m, only on Premier Christian Radio, where faith comes to life.